welcome everybody. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement to country. I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Now, what a panel we have for you this morning. A big thank you to DoubleVerify for providing this panel and such a important and also right now very topical subject to be discussing. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Julie Eddleman to the stage, the Global Commercial Officer for DoubleVerify. Julie.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you to all the Adweek folks who have hosted an amazing event. I'm not sure if this is being broadcast to New York, but what I told the Australians yesterday is I got to Adweek. It was incredibly organized. Obviously, it's a beautiful location at Luna Park, and everyone was so nice. It's definitely the best Adweek that I've ever been to. So thank you to all the Adweek folks. So I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more in depth when we have the rest of the panelists up here. But again, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. We know it's a very busy time, and it's very early in the morning. So we appreciate you being here so early. Just a little bit about DoubleVerify, who we are and what we do. We were founded in 2008 as an ad verification company. So 15 years ago, basically what we did was to make sure that the ads that you were paying for appeared and were not fraudulent. We've actually moved much more beyond that, and our mission is to make the internet stronger, safer, and more secure. We've moved from just verification to measurement. We started out with just post-bid measurement. Now we have gone to pre-bid measurement. And very exciting, yesterday we announced the intention to acquire Scibids. Scibids is an AI-based company that will allow you to, in real time, create algorithms to be able to optimize your programmatic spend. So it's the biggest investment we've ever made. We're very excited. We think it's really going to transform our company and really be able to offer you new capabilities around the world. We're a very large company, 5.5 trillion transactions measured in 2022. So Mel, my good buddy from Google, 8.5 billion searches a day on Google. We measure 5.5 trillion transactions across the web and the walled gardens. We're in 70 plus countries and we cover 44 languages. We have clients, global clients from around the world, and many of the top brands here in Australia. Very importantly, we went public about 2.5 years ago, and when we got the management team together with the board, we wanted to do something beyond, honestly, just make money. So what we did was to establish a pillar of 3 very important parts of our company. This is called DV for Good. There's 3 pillars. One is sustainability, one is the advancement of truth, and one is equity. So we not only take parts of our profit every year to these 3 pillars, but we also have partnerships with organizations within these 3 pillars, and we put staffing, manpower, women power against these 3 pillars to be able to advance these causes around the world. And today, what we're going to talk about is equity. That's why you're here today. We're very excited about some senior women we have from really around the world, most of them based in Australia, and they're going to be able to share some pretty incredible stories. Just a few points here that talk about some of the progress that we have made, which is incredible, but also a lot of work that we still have to be done. And we're really excited not only to have women in the room, but the male allies in the room that I know are going to advance these causes in Australia. So first of all, this is a Harvard Business Review study that talks about more women. Any company, any organization that has more women in senior positions has more profits, more social responsibilities, and a better customer experience. This is data-based from the Harvard Business Review 2 years ago. This is one that is like an amazing stat and also kind of hurts me to the core. So this year, for the first time, over 10% of women are in CEO positions for Fortune 500 companies. Very important barrier for us to break. That means there's still 88% of the companies that are run by men. Love men, but we need more women in CEO positions. One of the other things we're going to talk about today is just the really incredible global interest and growth in women's sports. All sports. Obviously, Australia and New Zealand is hosting the World Cup. Absolutely incredible. One of the reasons we're here, my wife and I are here, is to watch the World Cup all over Australia and New Zealand. But it's not just soccer. It's basketball, it's netball, it's golf, it's tennis, It is a global phenomenon. The fastest growing TV ratings in the world are all around women's sports of any category that is measured in television broadcasts. And then very importantly, I'm going to ask a question. How many of the women in the room played sports growing up? So the majority of women, and there's a lot of other things that you can do, music, art, etc. But 94% of C-suite women in the United States played sports growing up. So it's just another proof point that teamwork, collaboration, strength, grit, perseverance comes from sports and is very applicable to the boardroom. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about, or bring the panel up here as you are coming up here. Julie, I'm going to have you come up first. I'm going to have them introduce themselves, but Julie Eddleman is the CEO and founder of Angel City Football Club, which is the NWSL-based professional team. Maria is the CEO of Mindshare in Australia. Mel Silva, a good buddy of mine from Google, is the managing director in charge of Australia and New Zealand. We're doing high fives as we get up here. And then finally, Susanna is the CMO of NAB here in Australia. So thank you to these incredible women for being here today. So I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves quickly. I'm going to model how we're going to do that. So again, my name is Julie Eddleman. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of DoubleVerify. I've been at DV for almost 3 years. Before that, I spent 7 years, 7 amazing, wonderful years at Google, leading some of their largest global businesses. And then for 20 years before that, I was at Procter & Gamble in a variety of brand management positions. The last role I had was the CMO of North America. And I loved P&G too. Every company I've been with, it's been hard to leave. Very importantly, I have an amazing wife, Diane, and we have 5 children together. In a blended family. So we have former partners. We brought them all together, ages 16 to 37. And probably the most fun part of anything I said is we're grandmas to a 3.5-year-old amazing son named Griffin. So that is definitely the best part of anything. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, Julie.
Such a pleasure to be here, Julie. Thank you. I'm Julie Eddleman. I'm the co-founder and president of Angel City Football Club, one of the newest professional women's soccer teams, football teams, in the United States. I founded it with 2 other women, Natalie Portman, the actress and activist, and Karen Nortman, who's a venture capitalist. We are the only female-founded, majority female-owned, and majority female-run team, I think, in the world. We came out of the gates, guns a-blazing, with a goal to invest in women's sports, to drive attention and awareness for gender equity and pay equity, and use Angel City Football Club as a platform that's bigger than sport, to use it as a way to bend the curve towards equity, having much larger vision that if we're successful, we're leaving the world much better for our kids growing up, both boys and girls, than we found it. We had an incredible inaugural season. We are now on a 6-game unbeaten streak, which is really interesting for the basketball player in me because I win and lose games, but in soccer, you can tie games. So I get to say an unbeaten streak. My background is in entertainment, mostly in gaming and entertainment in Hollywood. And just thrilled to be here. Thank you. I also have an amazing girlfriend. I have 2 kids. One of them turns 13 tomorrow. So this is the first time I'm missing her birth. Sorry, she's turning 15 tomorrow. I try to avoid that because that means she can now drive. And so both makes me extremely happy and also incredibly scared for the rest of the world. But it's the first birthday I'm going to be missing. So I'm kind of bummed about that. But she equates that to a lot of presents. So I'm taking present recommendations from you. What is quintessential Sydney to bring back?
All right,
Maybe some clip-on koalas. So she might be a bit too old for that. I'm Maria Grivis. I'm the CEO of Mindshare. We're a media agency whose purpose is to deliver good growth for our clients, for our people, and for the planet. My background, I've had over 20 years, almost 20 years experience in this industry, always in Australia. I've worked both publisher side at Yahoo, and it's so lovely to see so many ex-Yahooers in the crowd today. And most of my career has been spent in leading digital transformation for clients, digital maturity, ad tech, martech, and marketing effectiveness. And now taking those skills into a broader leadership role, I get to work with wonderful clients like Susanna, which is really inspiring. I'm also a mother to an 8-year-old daughter who kindly lent me her Matilda's jersey today. So it's very tight. If you see my arms go a bit limp, you know why. But it's been just wonderful to see the enthusiasm and the excitement around this World Cup. And it really does feel like a watershed moment for women's sport. I really hope to see that continue.
Go.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Mel Silver. I'm the Managing Director for Google Australia and New Zealand. I've been at Google for 16 years, which feels like a really long time. But as you can all imagine, it's a very fast-moving space. So it doesn't feel like I've ever sort of done the same thing for more than about 4.5 minutes. I am a mother of 3 kids, 13, 10, and 2. So this morning was sprinkled with Weet-Bix and Spider-Man costumes, and then making it here by 7:30. So for all of you working parents out there, like I feel the pain, feel the juggle. I think I look at my job at Google in sort of a few parts. Obviously running the ads business and working with sort of Australia's most sophisticated advertisers to get great results. Leading an incredible team of Googlers to try and achieve their best and live up to their potential. And then also making a significant contribution to Australia's digital future. So super passionate about what digital can unlock. And, you know, today's topic of sport is actually also one close to all those things, because I think digital is going to play a huge role in terms of putting sport into the hands of many consumers. And the coverage of the World Cup is a great example of that. We're seeing some awesome highlights packages being put on YouTube that are doing super well. But also mother of a daughter who loves playing netball and loves playing sport. And I want to see her feel like that's an option and a possibility for her going forward. So thanks for coming along this morning so early.
Awesome. Suzanne?
Hi, everyone. I am Susanna Rostevsky. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at NAB. I've been there for 6 years. Prior to NAB, I worked at GE for over 13 years. Primarily marketing across a number of different industry segments, which has been super fun. So if there are any marketers out there, it's fantastic that we can actually apply our skills to whatever segment you want to work for. I also sit on the North Melbourne Football Club board. For any of you who follow AFL religiously, you know that we are currently last on but hey, I'm all for transformation and love a challenge. At NAB, we actually were the first to sponsor the AFLW. So that's been in place for 6 years, and it's just been super, super fun to see that sport grow for females. Participation rates have grown, pay increases for our players. There's a lot of positive stuff, which I'm sure we will cover today. Of Macedonian descent, North Macedonia, again, another story which we can cover off some other time. So cultural element there, came from a blue-collar background, 2 boys, one that is 17 that's currently blunting at me, and a 15-year-old that is on the spectrum but is the nicest person you will ever meet. So that is me.
Awesome. Thanks, Susanna. So I'm going to start off with a fairly general question open to any of you. What is some of the biggest progress that you've seen for women in the workforce, let's say over the last 10 years, and where do you think we really need to focus over the next few years to really be able to make even more progress? So anybody who wants to answer that?
I'm happy to start. I think the biggest progress is actually seeing females in senior positions, and different types of females with different styles and, approaches to the workforce. I think as we sort of move through, our own careers, the single most impactful thing is seeing people like you do roles and seeing that you can actually do them, whether you decide to have children or not, or whether you're married or not married, whether for all the diversity, you want to be able to see not just females actually, but different types of people taking leadership positions on and doing it their way. I think that's been huge, and we absolutely want more of that.
I think just I'm a bit of a data nerd, so I was mining some ABS data last night.
How about that?
Wanting to understand, what were some correlations that have happened over the last 10 years. And interestingly, looking at when the paid parental scheme was introduced by the federal government in Australia, that was in 2011. And so for the decade prior to that, the participation of women in the workforce had really only shifted by 3%. In the decade following that scheme being introduced, it increased by threefold. So for me, that really indicates how vital systemic change is to changing the course of female participation in the workforce and addressing actually what those barriers for representation really are. And I think that's where big business has really gotten behind this, understanding what those barriers are, what policy changes can be instituted to encourage greater equity from a gender perspective within the workforce. And that's what I hope to see moving forward, continue to develop.
I mean, I'll just build on that with, I guess, some more anecdotal or observational things. I think even just in my career, so starting out working in the mid-90s, the idea of a young woman in the workforce speaking up about something that she saw or heard that was not cool it just did not happen. And I think the mindset of, I know what I took into the workforce, which was, okay, I'm in like the boys' playground, I better act according to the boys' rules. That's gone. That is gone. And I think that is just such an important barrier that's been broken down. I think the other observation is building on parental leave. Like, it is legit 50-50, I think, at Google in terms of females and males taking parental leave. And that is such a huge enabler. When you can go back to work knowing that your partner is going to stay home with the baby, or you're going to have, a couple of months together, that is, I think, a huge enabler for women to be able to come back into the workforce in a really, really different way. I think we've still got a long way to go in terms of childcare solutions right here in Australia, but they're two of the probably biggest ones that I've noticed that have changed the game.
And Julie, I'm going to ask even a deeper question, because you lead an organization that is mostly female, female identifying. It's an incredible organization to be a part of. Just candidly, my wife and I became investors about 6 months ago. It's a dream that we never knew that we had, and it is incredible. Like, it is I worked at Procter & Gamble and Google, and I love DoubleVerify, but it's probably the coolest thing that I've ever been a part of. It is not an organization. It is not a company. It is like, it's a team, a family, a movement. So I just put a lot of pressure on you. But can you tell us a little bit more about that movement and that momentum and how you're seeing that kind of in LA in the US? And then you've been here for about a week, so you're bringing it to the world.
Yeah, it's also the way I was thinking about the question, because part of me gets really negative, right? The fact that you even asked the question, the fact that we're talking about it, shows that we're not there yet and we have so much longer to go. And so when you stop talking about something is when you know you actually have that seat at the table. So I was trying to think from my perspective what was different. It was amazing to hear from larger organizations that, can actually move the needle if they put their weight behind it. And the first thing that came to mind, which sort of answers your second question, is allyship, right? So I'm later in my years. Thankfully, I don't look it. Well, I just makes me feel like, but, it used to be there was one job, right? Like, all the women were fighting for a job. Or you'd have a female boss, but she wasn't really a mentor because she needed to instill her place, or she was always looking up and not, opening the door and then dragging you through and then holding it open for the rest of the people to come through. And I think that's one of the things that I've noticed that's changed, and certainly with Angel City, is this idea that we are going to support each other and we're going to hold the door open and we're going to drag you through. So it's not like having one woman. We have an executive team of 12. We have one man, which, by the way, it's not good from a diversity standpoint. We recognize that, but also we'll get there. But I think that's one of the big differences, which is we are bringing other women along and giving women the opportunity, because there is this, I think we all agree that when a job is available, men will say, I want to do it, even if they don't have the skills or the experience to do it. They and women will won't necessarily put their arms up if they don't feel like they're qualified for it, versus knowing that we can do it, but being held back by what we see on what we have on paper. And so with Angel City, there was a real intent to build it female-led, female-forward, predominantly because it is a women's football club, but also because we wanted to create an organization that didn't exist before. And in our success, allow others to follow, because we can show that if you build it a different way, you could have a positive result. And in our case, and in sports, it's being profitable, it's leading with impact, it's making a difference in our community. And so when Julie says it's a team, it's a family, it's a movement, those are all true, because what we're doing is so much bigger than just getting, W's on the pitch. It's about having that impact and telling our story as loudly as possible so that we can show there's a different way. So from allyship, the other thing that we focus a lot on is attention. We are unapologetic about telling our story. We tell our story as loudly as we can, as often as we can, with as much facts and figures as possible, because we want to change the narrative that women can't lead, women are good leaders, women's sports is an investable asset, it isn't a growing asset, and people don't care about women's sports. All of those points are false. And we need to have more and more data points to prove that it's false, so that it becomes an obvious response. Of course I want to invest in women's sports. Of course I want to watch women's sports. Of course I want to broadcast women's sports. Of course I want to sponsor women's sports, because that's where the audience is going and that's where the growth is being seen. And so it's doing it together and sharing what we're doing and bringing incredible people into the ownership group that aren't your typical owners, right? We have celebrities and athletes and media executives and ad executives, and we have fashion designers, right? And we have GOATs. We have Billie Jean King. So if you can get Billie Jean King, I highly recommend it. But the point is, we have totally rethought about what does ownership look like, even at a professional sports level, so that we can have that kind of experience and insight, but also allow women to have a seat at the table they never thought they'd have a seat at, which is owning a women's professional sports team or owning any professional sports team.
So it's an amazing, amazing business model, and we can't wait to share more about it around the world. How many season ticket holders? 16,000 season, 16,600 season ticket holders. It's pretty amazing. More than the men's team.
Yeah, there are 11 professional men's team in Los Angeles. All have been around for at least 6 years. The newest men's professional soccer club, but the rest have been around for decades. That's more season ticket holders than 3 of the men's professional sports teams that have been in LA for decades.
So it absolutely can be done. It's amazing. The other thing that I think that I've seen in sports, and I'm involved in soccer and basketball quite a bit, is the traditional view was that there, just like jobs, there was only one seat at a table for women to rise. I think women's sports used to be that way too. Like the basketball teams and sports soccer teams, because then it was taking away funding and attention and broadcast rights. That is not what is happening now. They're working much more closely together. So it's really cool to see. All right, going on just a little bit more of the negative side, but let's say the productive side. What can we do with some of the headwinds that you all are seeing in the industry now? So, what's the biggest headwind that you see, and how do you think that we can address that? So, Mel, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that we've just got to maintain the rage. Right. You have to, I think, be constantly, when you're talking about diversity and inclusion, you have to be careful that it doesn't become an eye roll thing, that it doesn't become this like, oh, well, yeah, of course we're going to do that stuff. Like, it's going to take active management and focus for years and years and years to come. I mean, Julie, you just shared that number. Like, it almost brought a tear to my eye that it's 10% of Fortune 500 companies with a female CEO. I mean, that is just not good enough. And unless you have that little bit of rage in your, in your guts that's going to spur you into action, I don't think it's going to change. I think what I've been sort of playing around with a lot lately is this intersection between diversity and inclusion. And how do you balance recognizing everyone's uniqueness and quest for identity with creating a sense of inclusion and belonging? And, I don't have the answer. I wish I did. But I'm thinking about that quite deeply of, even when it comes to things like team fun events, it feels like, it might be a controversial thing to say, it feels like it was easier when you could just go, let's all go to the pub. Now, you are conscious of people having kids. You're conscious of people who might have recovering addiction issues. You're more conscious of these things because people speak up. So how do you create that sense of team and culture and fun while still being inclusive? So I think continuing to think about it, continuing to challenge what's out there and continuing to work on it every single day, because it will just fade away. And that's the biggest headwind, is it becomes just like a nice to have, tick a box.
It's interesting though, because we started off with a real rage, and it needs to continue, for increasing female diversity, because we all do believe that we want to access the whole population to get the best people for the best jobs and give everyone the best opportunities. I think one of the things that we need to navigate is the minority is the new majority. Like, people are starting to, there are all kinds of minority segments and what we really want to do is create a safe environment so that actually everyone rises to the top. And I actually worry that maybe, and this is controversial, maybe females have got their own community. We know that we can be whatever we want to be, and we know that there's a gaggle of, people behind us to push us through. It's almost like the Anglo-Saxon male.
Yeah.
And now, like, the minority. And that's not what we're after here. What we're here is everyone gets a fair go, everyone gets an opportunity, and we get, people doing the right jobs, lifting the world. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that, or we can go to the next question? All right, Susanna and Julie in particular. So very different backgrounds. Susanna, much more traditional, big industry. Julie, more tech startups. But there are power structures in organizations and in companies. And the power structures look different when you're 25, 35, 45, 55, and when you're, kind of a new person to the working world versus, the people that are up here in the C-suite. Like, the way that I look at my organization, the way I look at my day-to-day and how I interact with my company is very different now than it was 30 years ago, and that means I'm old. But I would love to hear, Susanna and Julie, just a little bit of perspective on how you navigated that and how it's different.
Oh, it's so tedious. I'd rather not navigate it, but
Let's see what it is.
Yeah. Do you know, when I was younger, there's two things that are imprinted on my mind that I really wish I had a very different reaction to, and I was too scared to as a youngie to do it. And I can just remember them. One was a older gentleman said to me, "Don't you worry your pretty head about that," which really pissed me off. I was about 20 and I didn't say anything. So shame on me. And the second was, I was traveling. I'd been on a 3-week course at GE, who do these amazing leadership courses, and I just got back. And one of my peers actually said, "How did you cope with, being away from your children for that long?" And again, I didn't say anything. And I didn't say anything because I was younger. So earlier on, 25, 30 years ago, we weren't expected to speak up. We didn't know how to speak up. We didn't see anyone speaking up. I'm hoping that every single female, young person, anyone in a minority feels like they can speak up now. And it's our responsibility as an organisation to make sure that there are policies in place and, that you are able to feel comfortable to do that, because it's so important to speak up. Mm. If someone's making you feel awful, they're making other people feel awful. Now, I think to navigate those power structures, surround yourself with a coalition of the willing, even as, a junior person or a senior person. Find people that are like you. Find people that, you can work alongside with. Find your sponsors and do your job really, really well, because that's how you navigate the power structures. And, avoid the bullshit, frankly. If you play by the politics game, it may work in the short term, but I've genuinely found that playing a straight bat always wins. And I know sometimes it's hard to play a straight bat, but always wins. Genuinely, the people that are using politics or are being nasty end up disappearing.
Mm-hmm. Julie, what about you?
Well, I'm not sure I've done a good job since I'm an entrepreneur, which means I don't like working for people. But when I was younger at one of my startups, my boss, who's also just a really good friend, said to me, Julie, you wear your emotions on your sleeve. Like when we're in meetings, I know exactly what you're thinking. I know exactly what you're thinking. And he meant it as a real negative. It's probably because I roll a lot. And I changed my behavior for a long time. And then realized when I got older, like that's actually my strength. My strength is my passion. It is my enthusiasm. It is my excitement. And it doesn't necessarily fit into the box of what corporate America or white, straight corporate men want in a boardroom. And it took me a long time to get really comfortable with that. And I think the answer is you are your best if you are your authentic selves. And if someone can't handle that, then it's their problem, not yours. And to your point, if you're excellent at your job and you bring it, then there's nothing to apologize for. So I think one of the things that has helped Angel City be so successful is I really believe in what we're doing. I'm passionate about what we do. I bring people along that have the same level of passion, enthusiasm, and excitement for what we're doing. And I could never find a Julie if I wasn't my authentic self. We're magnets. We gravitate towards each other. And so being able to build an organization where you can bring people that are like you, that can affect that change, that don't see barriers. When we went to sell sponsorship, the highest sponsorship in front of kit that was out there was $450,000 US, right? We sold ours for $2.5 million. And it's because we valued who we were, we valued our product, we valued our owners, we valued our community, we valued our city, and we just wouldn't take any less. And luckily we found incredible partners that supported that. But if we didn't have that confidence and that self-belief, we never would have achieved that. I mean, I would never have had the people around the table that would also take that leap with me if they didn't know who I was and they wanted to, bring their best authentic self too.
Great advice. One thing that I always talk to my organizations about, which I think is really important, and it goes back to your point, Susanna, is delivering consistently at an excellent level is critically important, especially if you want to move up in an organization. If you're in sales, going up and down is okay. You won't make as much money. But if you want to have a broader remit, you want to build an org, you want to have more people reporting to you, I think it is incredibly, incredibly important that somebody can rely on you, that you deliver consistently. And those are the people that I've seen, again, Google, P&G, DoubleVerify, who have been able to move up in an organization and be able to get promoted. So speaking of those folks, Mel is absolutely one of my sheroes. And like probably everyone in the world, when you get to know this story a little bit more, but especially all the Googlers in the world. So Mel has a really important big job at Google. Google has a lot of attention from many industries, many governments around the world. And Mel is the leader of Australia and New Zealand. So a couple of years ago, when she had her youngest son, she literally testified in front of Senate one day and went into labor that night. I literally can't even imagine it, but I remember when it happened, and literally all the Googlers around the world are like, Mel Silva is a fucking hero. Like, she is amazing. There's nobody stronger than that. So Mel, can you just say a little bit about that story, how you coped and how you were able to survive?
Oh, yeah. It's a little bit of PTSD sometimes to think about it. No, look, it was a really intense time, and it's not like it happened super quick, right? We were going through quite a lot of high pressure time for about a year. So, to be honest, I think finding out that I was pregnant during that process was probably the most traumatic thing, more than actually having the baby. Because it was just not something that, we had planned. He was a lovely little surprise. But, I kind of reflect back on that time, and I do remember some of the strange decisions or strange reactions I had during it. Like, I knew that it was coming to a head, and I knew that the Senate was going to be a big moment in the whole story of what this sort of issue was going to be about. And I remember when I got word of what the date was, and it was like 4 days before I was due to have the baby. And I remember thinking at the time, yes, I'm going to have like 4 whole days to relax afterwards, which is nuts, right? Like when you think about, you normally leave work a couple of weeks beforehand and you're sort of having this chill. But I care so deeply about the job that I have. There was no question that I was going to do it. Right? There was absolutely no question that I would show up for that. And, look, I think the adrenaline just at the end of the day kind of like brought him out a little bit earlier. But I do want to say this, you can't choose the timing of all of these things, and you want to show up and do your absolute best. I had an incredible team of people around me at that time. We'd worked like 24 hours a day together on this one particular issue. We formed bonds that strangely enough, the majority of the core team was female. And we formed bonds that I would like, they're more like it's like a sisterhood. And we had to cry together. We had to like punch walls together. We had to slam doors together. We had to come together in a line and have very serious conversations with very serious consequences. So even though on the outside it looks like this, oh my God, you had to have the baby and then you had to, never once did I think I was not leaving it in the very capable hands of an incredible set of people. But I think the other insight from that time was, I did have to do a few things after the baby was born. There were a couple of, not going to lie, conversations with very important people where I had a newborn baby in my arms. But they sleep a lot in the early days, so it was kind of okay. But then I did cut off and I took 9 months of maternity leave. And this time more than ever, I realised how much of a missed opportunity maternity leave is for organisations. Reese, who's in the audience today, Reese stepped up to lead the ads business while I was gone. We had probably somewhere between 7 and 10 people step up during that time. They took on new roles, they had development opportunities. And I've got to say, I came back the following January to a team of superheroes. Superheroes who'd walked a mile in my shoes, who'd walked a mile in someone else's shoes, who, everybody's role, I think, has evolved since then. And so if only we looked at maternity leave like an opportunity to develop our best and brightest people, as opposed to problem to fix, plug that hole, we are just missing out on a huge opportunity. Right now, I'm actually stepping up for my boss. I'm doing his role for a couple of months while he's taking long service leave. And, just before he left, he actually said to me, which I've learned a lot from, you know what, make the decisions you need to make, and I will live with whatever you decide when I come back. There's so much empowerment in those words. Not to call me if this happens, if that happens, I need you to tell me, make sure that you communicate this. And didn't tell me what to do, just said, completely trust you, and I will live with whatever you decide when I come back. Holy shit, that is like next level empowerment. But, long story short, women have babies every day. Sometimes people squat in fields and have them. It was just kind of another day. But the more interesting part is how we can take advantage of that as a development opportunity for people, I think.
Totally agree. Thanks, Mel. So, Maria, WPP has done a really good job, especially in Australia and New Zealand, at achieving gender equity at the most senior levels of the organization. And you are one of those amazing individuals at the C-suite level. Can you talk a little bit about how that's happened over the last few years?
Absolutely. I think it's interesting that, we get called out for that statistic, 50-50. It shouldn't have to seem like an achievement given in Australia over 50% of the population are women. But it does. And if you look at the ASX top 300 companies, only 11% of those are chaired by women. So clearly there is still a job to be done, as, the panelists have shared earlier as well. From a WPP perspective, it very much wasn't necessarily driven from an ambition to achieve that outcome. It was always about finding the right people for the right role. And when you have, parity in terms of the population, then naturally that statistic should follow. So that's been a really big mantra of Rose Herzog, our president, in how she thinks about casting the right talent and finding those opportunities for people across the organisation. But really, I guess what I have seen shift is our mindset around thinking about the whole self and the whole person in terms of our workforce, and therefore looking at what are the barriers to our people succeeding and thriving. Because at the end of the day, what we really want is a happy workforce, and a happy workforce that is more productive, has less absenteeism and less churn. And that's ultimately what's going to drive performance. So what we've gotten more granular around is understanding what are those barriers to our people thriving. What is actually limiting their opportunity to be happy in their life and within the workplace? And how can we develop policy around that to better support the full person? What's eventuated are some really progressive policies around things like perimenopause and menopause, period policies, gender affirmation, equitable parental leave, so on and so forth. And ultimately aspects to how people's lives exist and their various different life stages across their career that ensure we're giving everyone an opportunity to have a longer and developing career within our organisation. And naturally, that has resulted in equity.
Just building on that question, any other examples on, life stages or life events, policies in particular? Because I think it's really important what you said, Maria, is if it's one-off exceptions or something that's not built into your company's policy or built into governmental policies, it's probably not going to be sustainable. So any other examples that you all have that would
just recently we've introduced time off for transgender operations. I mean, all of it. Like, you kind of go, if there is segments in our population at work that need time off, we give it. And we give it because we understand that people need some moments in time, regardless of what the issue is. And I'm delighted that actually it's now less important about, what it is that our colleagues are actually engaging or issues that they have. But the organisation understands that there is always going to be things that happen that, our colleagues need time off to be able to deal with. And there's loyalty attached to that. Like, if you can actually help a colleague when times are down or they've got things that they need to sort through, guarantee they come back and feeling incredibly loyal that the organisation has backed them in.
Well, yeah.
So, I mean, look, I think in the last, 16 years, I've seen this evolve so much. I would love for it to get to the point where we are just saying, need some time leave, But for me, things like carers leave, I mean, my parents are getting a bit older. My father-in-law's, suffering from dementia, and I've got young children. So it's sort of this sandwich of pressure. And if you just need to take a day, I mean, I think I'm lucky, and we are lucky at Google, because it's always been a matter of, like, you focus on the output. When you do it, it's kind of less important. So being able to time shift your day, and let's make sure we use some of this sort of learnings post-COVID to give people the flex that they need, create the opportunities for people to come together and feel that sense of belonging, but, always bring your whole self to work. Daughter, mother, worker, wife, whatever that is for you, we want to show up for you. But I completely agree with Susanna. I mean, we've had a couple of instances of people who've been struck down with, pretty long-term or, horrible illness. The space that gets made and the way that teams come together, it actually makes teams stronger when they feel like they're being supported by their employer, as well as that person feels, embraced and a sense of belonging. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
I want to move on to the next question. So, Julie, you mentioned it a little bit earlier that, and this is a little bit of a stereotype, but it is true, proven with data, that female or underrepresented minorities often don't apply for jobs or don't go for jobs because they feel like they're underqualified, while male colleagues oftentimes go for jobs that they're not at all qualified for, but they feel like they have the competence to be able to do that. So this question is for anyone. What should we do about that? Like, how should we go about improving the chances of underrepresented minorities going for those jobs and getting it? Any advice there?
Well, what's interesting in that body of research, I think LinkedIn revealed some of those statistics, but what they also found in that research was that when a minority, a woman, etc., does apply for a stretch role, they're 18% more likely to actually get the role. And for me, that shows, well, maybe it's not a hiring manager problem. It's actually a candidate problem. And it's a confidence gap that clearly exists for women and for minorities that needs to be addressed. So how do you address confidence? And it set me down a whole rabbit hole of thought there. And I was kind of thinking, you know, as girls growing up, like, what is your source of confidence and what is influencing that? And there's a whole dynamic now around social media, toxic influences, and how that's actually shaping the confidence paradigm for girls. And I think if that's the way that stat exists now, how much worse is it going to get as that system kind of continues and, you know, shapes the psychology of girls today? So I think there's a lot to be done around really understanding the barriers to confidence and how we can further encourage that to be overcome. And I think sport is the perfect vehicle to be a catalyst for how confidence for women can increase and improve.
Yeah, we sort of look at it three ways. One is, as I said, we view Angel City as a global brand. If we're a global brand, we can drive the most attention and awareness to what we're doing, ultimately drive revenue and use that revenue to drive impact. So if we can put Angel City on the global stage, we can have the most impact and drive the most revenue. That's clear if it's any product in the world, and so that's where we want to start. And so as it relates to this issue, we do three things. One, we make sure that our staff gets the opportunity to talk on panels and to show who they are and to talk about their path and getting there, because no one's path is linear. Certainly in sports, it's not linear. And as women, like, we'd still be here if I read my LinkedIn. So I make sure that not just myself are on panels, but my leadership team and even the individuals below them get the opportunity not only to go to events, but to actually get to speak and tell their story, because I think that's one way. It doesn't build confidence, but it shows you, like, if I can see it, I can be it. The second thing is in how we write the job requirements, right? The job descriptions, right? We don't require necessarily a certain number of years or a certain type of schooling, because we know individuals have a different path today, and it's really about the person, the culture fit, the experience, and most importantly, can they learn and do they have a passion for what we're doing, right? And you can't find that in a resume. So we try to write the job description in a way to give room so that you're not like checking boxes, which I think potentially helps sort of the underrepresented and women. And then the third thing is really specific to organizations, and I would imagine yours are the same, which is you must interview a diverse talent pool before you hire someone. Like, you cannot interview 8 people that look exactly the same and pick one of them. So we certainly force that, make sure that we have diversity through the interview process. And then the last thing, which I was really proud of that my team did, we were trying to hire another person in our partnership marketing team. So once we sell a sponsorship, it's actually activating them. And we had this one candidate, not diverse, who has done the job as an exceptional, and she was fantastic. And we had this other candidate that was diverse, exceptional, had all the skill sets, and it was really close. But, you know, apples to apples wasn't exactly the same, but could do the job, and there was no sort of, both would be great. But the question is, you know, what do we do? And we ended up choosing the candidate that we thought had the greatest potential to learn, had the most passion for what we were doing, and we could get there. And that was a choice that we made, which is say, if we want to see the world differently, we're going to have to behave differently. And obviously, you know, checked all the boxes. So I think those are some things that individual companies can do to try to address this. Sometimes you just have to give the opportunity to someone that you know is going to make a difference. So,
and can I Julie?
Yeah,
sorry. There's one practical tip, because, you know, we all have imposter syndrome, but I promise you, if you go to one of your leaders in your current organisation and say, hey, can I have a half-hour coffee with you, have a chat about my career, they will say yes.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then, go find another company because they're not leaders. So my tip to you is it's far less intimidating going in for an interview if you've already had a meeting or a coffee with someone that you want to work with, and that takes the pressure off. So that's just a little practical tip in dealing with stereotypes.
Another quick practical tip for the leaders in the room, don't underestimate the power of tapping someone on the shoulder.
Yeah.
It's so impactful if you go up and say, there's a role open, I really think you should have a crack. That will mean the one. I know that's happened to me in the past, and it's been the number one thing to spur me beyond what's on that job requirements doc. So just do it.
I think the last 8 jobs that I have had did not exist before I had them, and I've had people tap me on the shoulder at DoubleVerify, at Google, at Procter & Gamble. And I'm not going to say a lot of it, but definitely some of that is because I have networked and I have socialized. But again, I've been consistent in delivering my results. So people can see me in different roles than I've been in, or different roles than I've even ever been there before. So, Suzanne, I want to go to sports a little bit because you have, put literally your money where your mouth is in terms of the sports sponsorships that you've done. Can you talk a little bit about those and from a business perspective, how that has helped your brand?
Yeah, well, there's two angles, I guess. From a NAB perspective, as I said, we decided to sponsor the AFLW 6 years ago when it first started. And that was quite a job, actually, to get the exec across the line with that, because we didn't know what the audiences were going to be. We didn't know the talent. We didn't know a lot of things. It was quite a big deal. But it basically came down to the fact that, our purpose is serving our customers well and helping communities prosper. Helping communities prosper, we want female participation in sport. We know there's ample research to say that people doing sports leads to good things and mental well-being and all the rest of it. So there's a community angle, but also from a revenue perspective, there's really hard to grow. It's really hard to get new audiences. We've been sponsoring AFL for 20 years. This was a beautiful opportunity to grow audiences and, as a marketer would say, get eyeballs. And it's absolutely been extraordinary. Now, it takes time, but, we got in there cheap because it takes time. And we helped grow the sport. I mean, there's been 19% increase in eyeballs just in the last year. The players are getting better. Female participation, we're at 39% of female Oz kickers are coming through the system, which I just think is amazing. So there's so much goodness there on so many levels in terms of revenue, mental well-being, confidence for females, and positive brand attribution for us. North Melbourne board, we have a female CEO, a female chair, and me as a female director. It just goes back to having a diverse board. There's an accountant, there's a lawyer, there's females, there's males. Geez, we operate well. In terms of the executive there is just no bullshit because everyone's point of view is being taken into consideration. We're looking at the same problem from very different lenses. We get to really good answers.
Awesome. And then, Julie, do you just want to throw out a couple stats on the current World Cup, just how well it is doing?
Yeah, so congrats to the Matildas.
Woo!
Now it's incredible. So in 2019 in France, they sold 1 million tickets. There's 1 billion people that watch. Before the World Cup even kicked off here down in Sydney, you'd already sold over 1 million tickets. As of last week, you'd sold 1.5 million tickets. So you already broke the record for 2019. And we're not even into the I like to say the Sweet 16 because I'm a basketball player, but you guys say the round 16. And now the Matildas have gone on, I expect that to continue to grow. And you had the highest opening of any sporting event in New Zealand ever for New Zealand with the home opener. So the New Zealand Women Football Club holds the record as the most attended sporting event, which is not the men. So that is an incredible statistic. And the attendance has been rising for every single game, certainly for the Matildas. I was at the match where you guys destroyed Canada. and it was over 30,000 fans, and it was absolutely incredible. So we're seeing the positive momentum for 2019 to 2023 carry in the World Cup. The viewership of the second round of the U.S. game against the Netherlands was the highest rated group stage of ever any match for the U.S. women at over 6.9 million viewers, which is absolutely incredible. And you have to remember that was not at a time that was comfortable in the U.S. I think it was a midnight game or 11 p.m. game. So the United States is turning in to watch these matches, and you're seeing that around the world. If I was going to prognosticate and make a bet of some other statistics that come out of this, I think it's going to be the most watched World Cup of when you look at it on a game-by-game basis. What's so unique about the World Cup this year is that anybody can win. Some people think, the U.S. are, we're favorites. But if you ask the majority of people, it was really unclear who was going to win. You guys look great. England looks amazing. If you watched them last night, obviously the U.S. is in there. The Netherlands are strong. Japan is, surprising everyone. Nigeria is playing well. I still think Spain is a contender. I still think Germany's a contender. I mean, that is not normal for World Cup. Usually it's, U.S. and go home. And so I think the result of that is people are watching more and more games because they want to understand where this talent is coming from, which I think is incredibly exciting. And I think post the World Cup, there's going to be a real conversation about where the best football players are in the world, which is something that's not existed, which of course I'm not happy about. But once we win the World Cup, we'll be fine. It'll still be in the U.S. and they'll all be playing for Angel City Football Club. So it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
All right. Last question.
Yeah.
And I want this to be pretty practical. So in terms of work-life integration, and I do not believe in work-life balance. There's no balance, really. Sure. It's work-life integration. Do you have any hints for the folks in the room about different times in your life when you have asked either for specific things from your boss or company or asked them not to do? Either something that you specifically asked for or specifically said, please don't do this. I would love any practical advice. Susanna, Mel?
I don't know if I've asked the organisation, but I've said no to roles because the timing wasn't right. And I think it's okay to do that. You don't have to be running at 100 million miles an hour for your whole career. It is a marathon. And there'll be times in your career when you can take things on and there'll be times when you can't. So I think it's okay to be honest and open about that. And in fact, if you are going to say no to a role, you're better off saying timing's not right rather than I can't do it. Yes. Ask me in 6 months.
No,
look, I think the number one tip is to just be the boss of your boundaries.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely that if you go and have a really reasonable conversation with your boss and say, look, hey, I really have to set this boundary, that if they tell you to go get stuffed, it's a clear signal you're not really in the right place, right? I came back 4 days a week after my first 2 children. I was promoted to director at Google while I was working 4 days a week. Ironically, on the third maternity, my boss actually came to me and said, would you like to come back part-time? So again, just a shift in what's happened over 10 years. So just be the boss and know what your boundaries are and hold tight to them because, it makes your boss's life a lot easier, to be quite honest.
I totally agree with that. We've got a program for our leaders across Mindshare, which is called Luminous Leaders, and it's all about educating our leadership around how to set their boundaries, how to conserve their energy in recognition that if they're not bringing their best into their day, then that can't cascade through the business. So educating them in that way and, giving permission for that to be appropriate and how we want to operate the business has been really important for then how that is role modeled and enabled for the rest of the organization as well. So I guess my tip in that would be to set your boundaries, to consider what gives you energy, what fuels you, and to really prioritize that.
Yeah. Again, I think
I would just say one quick thing on that.
We both try to talk.
Well, it's just along the lines of boundaries, but for me, it was super specific. So when I had my kids, I wanted to, spend dinner time with them, and I wanted to make dinner. And so I made it very clear in the organization, I am offline from 6 to 9.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm offline. Don't send me anything. Don't text. If it's emergency, call me. Nobody makes phone calls anymore. So that's really good because you set that boundary. Then it's going to be important if they call. But I was I am offline between 6 and 9. So once I, had dinner and did the bathing and got them to bed, then I could get back online. And nobody pushed back. Everyone respected that. And I pretty much do it today where I really try to check. I mean, I do a lot of the moving of the kids around. And so I'm really offline between like 4 and 6, which is a weird part of the day. But if everybody knows it, then they can manage through it. I agree. There's no such thing as work-life balance. But if you can create that time, it actually gives permission for other people to do the same thing. And if you can get people working in their zone of genius at the time when they're most productive, everybody wins. And so that's just a little thing that
see what I mean? Things change, right? I'm online from 6 to 9 because I don't want to deal with my 17-year-old.
Setting boundaries and being clear with your team, I think, are really good learnings there.
I'm joking. I love my.
So I have one more thing. First of all, thank you to the panelists. Huge thanks. Great advice, interesting conversation, and thanks to everybody for the time. Speaking of strong, amazing young women, this is my daughter, Sydney, and I'm missing her birthday. It's the first time that I've missed a birthday. Speaking of, not missing things and being there, setting boundaries. So first of all, she's obviously incredibly gorgeous, but beyond that, she's incredibly strong, super bright, super fun, and is a huge Angel City fan, which makes me love her even more. And again, her name is Sydney. So I'm asking a favor, if you all can say happy birthday, Sydney, from Sydney. On the count of 3, I am going to record it from up here. Carrie's going to help me. So it's going to be happy birthday, Sydney, from Sydney, okay? 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday, Sydney, from Sydney! Woo!
And Sydney with the coolest accent from around the world, which she can do very well. So thank you, everyone, again. Huge appreciation to Adweek. Remember, we've got a great team from DoubleVerify here today. If you have any questions, have a great Adweek. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.